when it's time to let him go, even if your heart still wants him. There is a type of pain that no one talks about openly, that of knowing that you need to leave, but feeling that your body simply does not obey. It's as if two opposing forces wage a silent war within you. Your reason screams, "Get out of here," while your heart whispers, "Just one more day." And the worst? You discover that the biggest obstacle between you and your freedom is not him. It's yourself. In this video, I'm going to reveal the hidden mechanism that turns smart, strong women into emotional hostages. I'm going to expose the disturbing truth about how your own brain sabotages your attempts to leave. And I'll show you the exact moment, that invisible breaking point, where staying stops being love and becomes slow self-destruction. What you're about to discover goes against everything you've been taught about relationships. And it may be just what you need to hear to finally break free. 1. The illusion that your heart has created. His heart is a sophisticated liar. He doesn't make up stories out of thin air. It would be too easy to realize. What he does is much more dangerous. He takes fragments of reality and transforms them into something completely different. That cold good morning message becomes proof that he still cares. The silence of days becomes he's just busy. The promise broken for the 10th time becomes, this time it will be different. And so, piece by piece, your heart builds a parallel version of the relationship, one that exists only in your head. The problem is that this fake version looks so real that you start living in it. While reality shows you coldness, illusion sells you hope. While the facts scream abandonment, fantasy whispers possibilities. And the more you invest in this made-up version, the harder it becomes to accept the truth. Because accepting means admitting that you wasted time, energy, and tears on something that was never real. The human mind has a defense mechanism called confirmation bias. This means that we are only looking for evidence that confirms what we want to believe. If you want to believe that he still loves you, you'll find signs of that in any crumb of attention. A quick glance turns into a deep connection. Any conversation becomes a special moment. And when contrary evidence appears, and it always does, your brain simply ignores or minimizes it. But there is something even crueler about this illusion. It steals your gift. As long as you live in the fantasy of what the relationship could be, you completely lose touch with what it really is. She stops seeing the red flags because she is busy painting everything pink. He ignores the disrespect because he prefers to remember the good times. And so, day after day, the distance between reality and illusion widens, until you no longer recognize where one ends and the other begins. The first step to getting out of this prison is to recognize that it exists. There is no point in trying to negotiate with the illusion or trying to turn it into reality. It takes the brutal courage to look at the relationship exactly as it is, not as you would like it to be. And when you finally remove the lens of fantasy, the truth hurts so much that it seems impossible to bear. But it is precisely this pain that frees you. 2. When love becomes self-sabotage. True love makes you grow. It gives you wings, expands your horizons, brings you closer to the best version of yourself. But there is a subtle turning point where what we call love turns into something completely opposite. A slow poison that you administer yourself every day. And the scariest thing is that you don't even notice when this transformation happens. Emotional self-sabotage always begins with a noble justification. You think you're being understanding when you accept crumbs. He believes that he is being patient when he tolerates disrespect. He imagines that he is fighting for the relationship when in fact he is just canceling himself out. And every time you lower your standards, every time you swallow pride, every time you forgive the unforgivable, you are digging a deeper hole from which it will be harder and harder to get out. The body begins to give signals long before the mind accepts the truth. Your energy decreases. Sleep is disturbed. Anxiety becomes a constant companion. You lose interest in things that used to make you happy. Your friends comment that you have changed, that you are no longer the same. And you know, deep down, that they're right. But he keeps insisting, because giving up seems worse than continuing to suffer. There is a brutal difference between healthy persistence and destructive stubbornness. Persistence is when you face external challenges together with someone who is also committed. Stubbornness is when you fight alone against the indifference of those who should be by your side. Persistence builds. Stubbornness destroys, especially you. And the more you insist on a relationship that clearly doesn't work, the more you're telling yourself that you don't deserve better. Self-sabotage also manifests itself in the choices you make outside of the relationship. He begins to avoid situations where he could meet new people. She refuses invitations, isolates herself, puts her life on pause while waiting for him to change. He abandons his dreams because they don't include him. You sacrifice opportunities for growth because you are afraid that if you evolve too much, he will feel threatened and abandon you. And so, slowly, you become a shadow of who you were, all in the name of a love that only exists in your imagination. The breakup moment happens when you finally understand that staying in this relationship isn't about love. It's about fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Afraid to admit that you made a mistake. Fear that no one else will want you. And when you realize that you are destroying yourself out of fear, not love, something fundamental breaks inside you. And it is precisely this break that can save you. If you still feel tied to someone who's already gone but want to understand why your soul can't let go yet, discover the Jung method in the pinned comment below. 3. Emotional addiction disguised as love. Addiction is not just about chemicals. There is a type of emotional dependence that is as powerful as any drug, and much more socially accepted. It's that desperate need for his presence, for his attention, for his validation. And the worst thing is that this addiction comes disguised as true love, making you believe that the intensity of what you feel is proof of the depth of the feeling. The cycle works just like any other dependency. He gives you attention and affection. You feel euphoria, as if the world finally makes sense. Then it moves away. It gets cold. It disappears. You go into a withdrawal crisis. You feel unbearable anxiety, panic about losing it. Then he comes back with crumbs of affection, and you feel such relief that you mistake it for happiness. This pattern of extreme highs and lows is not love. It's your emotional roller coaster addicted brain. Neuroscience perfectly explains what happens. Each time he finally responds after hours or days of silence, his brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in chemical addictions. This chemical discharge creates a feeling of reward so intense that you start chasing that moment constantly. And the more erratic and unpredictable his attention is, the more addictive it becomes. It's the same principle as slot machines. The uncertain reward is more addictive than the guaranteed reward. The problem is that you mistake this chemical roller coaster for deep passion. He believes that he feels so intense because love is special, unique, powerful. He does not realize that intensity comes precisely from instability, not from connection. And so you convince yourself that no other relationship could make you feel this way. And you're absolutely right, because healthy relationships don't activate the same addiction circuits that this toxic relationship activates. Emotional dependence also completely alters your perception of yourself. You begin to measure your worth by the amount of attention you receive from it. If he comes to you, you're worth something. If he ignores you, you're no good. Your self-esteem is totally hostage to his behavior, rising and falling like a puppet. And the more this happens, the more you lose touch with who you really are, because your entire identity starts to revolve around him. Getting out of an emotional addiction is just as difficult as getting out of any other addiction. You will feel real withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, insomnia, obsessive thoughts, uncontrollable urge to come back. There will be times when the pain feels unbearable and you will want to give up on giving up. But there's a fundamental difference. While chemical addictions can destroy your body, this emotional addiction destroys your soul. And recognizing this is the first step to breaking the chains. 4. The signs you've been ignoring. The truth always leaves traces. Even when you desperately try not to see, the signs are there, screaming silently. The problem is not a lack of evidence. It is an excess of denial. Your brain works full-time to find alternative explanations, plausible justifications, reasons to believe that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. The first sign is the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. You measure every word before you speak. You calculate every move so you don't irritate him. You avoid certain subjects because you know they will generate conflict. He lives in a permanent state of alert, trying to predict his moods, to anticipate his reactions. And when he realizes that he is doing this, he invents that it is only care, consideration, maturity. Don't admit that it's pure fear. Fear of losing someone who has lost you for a long time. Another unmistakable sign is that you have become the only one investing. It's always you who searches, you who start a conversation, you who suggest meetings, you who try to solve problems. He only responds, only appears when convenient, only participates when it does not require effort. And you naturalize it, thinking that you're just being more interested or proactive. He does not want to see the obvious truth. A one-person relationship is not a relationship. It is an illusion. His friends and family begin to avoid the subject of him. When you mention it, you notice that embarrassed silence, those exchanged looks, those generic phrases that say nothing. They've seen the whole movie, they already know the ending, but they can't convince you because you defend him tooth and nail. And the more the people around you show concern, the more you move away from them, because deep down you know that they see what you refuse to see. True intimacy has completely disappeared. I'm not just talking about physical intimacy, but that deep connection where you could be vulnerable, share fears, share dreams. Now the conversations are shallow, mechanical, predictable. He no longer asks about his day, his feelings, his plans. And when you try to create these moments of closeness, you encounter a cold wall of indifference. But you convince yourself that it's a phase, that he's stressed, that he's going to pass. Perhaps the most brutal sign is that tightness in the chest that won't go away. That feeling that something is fundamentally wrong. That inner voice that screams truths you don't want to hear. Your body knows before your mind accepts it. Anxiety, insomnia, the constant heaviness on the heart. All these are alarm bells ringing at full volume. But you'd rather take medication for anxiety than face the cause of it. He prefers to treat the symptoms than to cure the disease. And so, keep ignoring until there is nothing left of you to ignore. 5. Because leaving hurts more than staying. There is a cruel paradox in the human heart. Sometimes the pain of leaving hurts more than the pain of staying. Even when you know rationally that you need to leave, something inside you clings to you with desperate force. And it's not weakness. It's a complex combination of fears, traumas, and psychological mechanisms that conspire to keep you exactly where you suffer most. The first reason is emotional investment. You have put so much of yourself into this relationship. Time, energy, tears, dreams, pieces of your soul. The idea of simply abandoning all that and starting over from scratch seems like an unbearable waste. It's the sunk cost fallacy. Keep investing in something bad just because you've invested too much before. But it works because the human brain hates losing, hates wasting, hates admitting that it made the wrong decision. Then, there is the fear of emptiness. Even though the relationship is a constant source of pain, it occupies a huge space in your life. You've structured your routine around him. Your plans include him. Your identity has blended with his. The prospect of waking up tomorrow and having none of this left, not the fights, not the reconciliations, not the hope, not the anxiety, creates a paralyzing terror. Because even known pain seems safer than unknown freedom. There is also that primal fear of not being enough. If you break up, you're publicly admitting that you weren't able to make it work, that you weren't good enough to be loved, that you failed. And worse, you are risking discovering that maybe no one wants you anymore, that this was your only chance, that you will be alone forever. These thoughts are irrational, but feelings don't follow logic. They follow patterns of emotional survival that have been etched since childhood. The fantasy of the future also hooks you. You've created a complete story in your head about how things are going to get better. Imagine the day when he will wake up and realize his value, the moment when everything will fall into place, the perfect future that you will build together. To give that up means to kill a version of the future that you were already living mentally. And killing dreams, even impossible ones, hurts as much as losing real people. There is also the psychological phenomenon called trauma bonding. When you go through intense cycles of pain and relief with someone, it creates a chemical connection in the brain that is stronger than any healthy love could ever create. That's why victims go back to aggressors. That's why addicts go back to drug dealers. That's why you go back to someone who only hurts you. It's not true love. It's your brain addicted to the pattern of abuse and reconciliation. But perhaps the deepest reason is this. To leave means to face yourself. While you're stuck in this relationship, you can blame him for everything that's wrong in your life. You can use suffering as an excuse not to grow, not to take risks, not to seek more. Leaving means taking full responsibility for your life, and that scares you more than anything. Because it means having no one else to blame when things go wrong. It means having to be the heroine of one's own story, not the victim. And some people prefer the known prison to terrifying freedom. Lar Hakur Kranda 6. The mourning of a love still alive. There is a special type of grief that no one teaches you to process. That of losing someone who is still alive, who still answers messages, who still exists, but is no longer yours. It is to mourn the death of something that technically still breathes, but that in practice has long since become a ghost. And perhaps it is the most difficult mourning of all, because there is no funeral, no closure, no ritual that marks the end. The process begins long before you actually leave. In fact, you're already grieving while you're still in the relationship, crying for the person he was in the beginning, for the connection you had, for the plans you made together. You are burying expectations, killing hopes, letting pieces of yourself die. And the cruelest thing is that no one around you understands what you are going through, because in the eyes of all of you, you are still together. The phases of grief appear in a scrambled and simultaneous way. There are days when you completely deny that it's over, convincing yourself that it's just a bad phase. On other days, anger takes over. Anger at him for not valuing you, anger at himself for allowing it, anger at the world for not being fair. Then comes the bargain. If I change this, if I give it one more chance, if I try differently, maybe it will work. Depression arrives like a drowning wave, leaving you paralyzed, without energy, without desire for anything. And acceptance, when it comes, is not linear. It comes and goes. It comes and goes like a tide. What makes this grief even more complicated is that you're grieving multiple losses at once. She loses the person she loved, but she also loses the version of herself that existed in that relationship. You lose the future you had planned, you lose the shared routine, you lose the identity of being in a couple. You even lose your family's suffering, because as strange as it may seem, that familiar pain has become part of who you are. And letting it go also means losing something. The body stores grief in ways that the mind tries to ignore. You wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing, loses appetite or eats compulsively. He cries without warning at random times. He feels a deep tiredness that no sleep solves. All of this is because you're processing a real loss. Even if no one has died, even if it's still there, your nervous system knows that something fundamental is over, and it's reacting with all the intensity of a concrete loss. There is also the mourning of what never was. You're not only mourning what you've lost, but also what you've never had. The healthy relationship you envisioned, the present partner they never were, the requited love you've wanted so badly. It is burying dreams that never got off the ground, expectations that never came true, promises that were never fulfilled. And in some ways, that grief is even more painful, because you're admitting that you've wasted time waiting for something that was never going to happen. The healing of this grief does not follow a straight line. There are days when you wake up feeling strong, ready to move on. And there are days when the longing hits so hard that you almost come back. There are moments of absolute clarity where he perfectly understands why he needed to leave. And there are moments of total confusion where he questions if it wasn't a mistake, if he shouldn't have tried again. This is normal. This is human. And you need to allow this process to happen without judging yourself, without rushing, without demanding from yourself an impossible recovery. 7. The courage to choose yourself. There comes a moment of decision where you need to choose between him and yourself. And for the first time in your life, you need to choose yourself, not out of selfishness, not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of survival. Because you finally understood that there is no possible romance when you are disappearing. There is no true love when you are fading away. There is no future together when you are dying alone. Choosing yourself doesn't come naturally to most women. We have been trained since we were children to be caregivers, to prioritize others, to find value in being needed. The idea of putting your needs above his seems almost immoral, selfish, wrong. But there is a brutal difference between being generous and being a doormat. Generosity comes from a place of abundance, of conscious choice. When you cancel yourself out for fear of losing someone, that's not generosity. It's self-destruction. The courage to leave does not appear all at once as an epic movie moment. It comes in small daily doses. It's the first time you don't immediately respond to his message. This is when you make plans without consulting him first. It's that day when you finally verbalize to someone you trust what you're feeling. It's every little act of reclaiming your space, your voice, your life. And each of these small acts of courage builds the strength necessary for the final act of walking away. But here's the part that no one tells you. Choosing yourself will make you feel guilty. It will seem that you are being cruel, insensitive, cold, because for so long you measured your worth by the ability to endure, to forgive, to give one more chance. Now, by setting boundaries and saying enough is enough, it will seem like you are the bad person in the story, and that guilt can pull you back if you don't understand that it's just another manipulation mechanism. This time, coming from within you. There's something profoundly transformative about looking in the mirror and saying, I deserve better than this. Not as an empty self-help statement, but as a visceral truth that you finally accept in your guts. Deserving more doesn't mean he's a horrible person or that you're a poor victim. It simply means recognizing that this particular relationship doesn't serve you, doesn't nourish you, doesn't do you any good, and that you have a fundamental right to pursue something different. Choosing to prioritize yourself also means accepting the consequences. It means being prepared for the difficult days of loneliness, for the nights when you will question your decision, for the moments when you will want to go back. It means understanding that there will be no fairy tale, that there will be no satisfying revenge, that he may never understand what he has lost, and yet choose to leave, because for the first time, you understood that your peace is worth more than any relationship, that your mental health is worth more than any love, that you are worth more than anything. And when you finally choose yourself, for real, without going back, without giving it another chance, without waiting for it to change, something magical happens. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. You start to breathe deeper. The colors shine again. Life regains its taste. And one day, without waiting, you look back and barely recognize the person you were, the one who thought it impossible to live without him. Because you discovered that not only is it possible to live without it, but that it is precisely without it that you finally begin to truly live.